The title of the special report in this month's issue of Red Book magazine is Sweetheart Murders When Teen Boyfriends Turn into Killers. They're called crimes of passion. They're crimes resulting from what we call now, and have for some time, fatal attractions. Jennifer Crompton was 14 years old when she met 18-year-old Mark Smith. One afternoon, Mark broke into her Bettendorf, Iowa home and stabbed her to death. There are hundreds of these so-called sweetheart murders each year. Why do they happen? And what can we do about them? Joining us now is the mother of Jennifer, Vicki Crompton, and Dr. Martin Blinder, author of a book called Lovers, Killers, Husbands, and Wives. Vicki, when your daughter met Mark Smith, what kind of a kid was he? I mean, what was your initial reaction? I've come to trust those initial reactions very much.
He was very shy and very quiet, and he had a very difficult time speaking with my husband and I. And so my impression was that he was very immature. And I later found out that he was much older than I had originally thought. But because of his immaturity, I felt comfortable with his relationship with my daughter.
Yeah, why were you misled about his age?
Because he did lie to me. I had made it clear to Jenny that I didn't want her to date someone that was 4 years older. Mm-hmm. I had said 2 years was about the limit that I was comfortable with, and she was quite taken with him. And so when I did find out his true age, I didn't worry because of his immaturity.
Yeah, they didn't really have dates, did they? And
no.
If they did have a couple of them, I think you drove them.
That's correct, yeah.
Where to the date and back from the date.
Yeah.
His pattern, his behavior began to change. At what point and in what way?
Okay. About 6 months into their relationship, she began to tire of him and attempted to break off their relationship. And then he became truly obsessive in his actions. Constant phone calls, following her around, getting into her locker at school, reading notes. And as I found out after her death, he was breaking into our home and going into her room and reading notes on her desk.
Dr. Blinder, you've investigated, you've covered hundreds of these situations. What's going on in a young man's mind as he develops and exhibits this behavior?
What distinguishes these obsessive lovers from everybody else is they don't come to love to enrich their lives, but to make up for profound defects and deficits within themselves. They're hungry, they need nurturing, they don't know how to take care of themselves, make themselves feel good. They fall in love, and for the first time they get a sense of wholeness and completeness, but it's dependent upon somebody else. It was dependent upon this little girl. And they get hooked on that person and on that love feeling and react to its loss just as strongly as a junkie would react to the possible loss of his heroin.
This is personal, Vicki, but I think it's important for the discussion, also important to understand the extent to which this young man was troubled. They were really never intimate, were they?
No. I believe that he pressured her for sex, and she did come and talk to me about that subject and asked me to help her, and I did arrange for some help for her, and she told him she was not ready. So as far as I know, they were not.
All right, now when he started this pressure,
Mm-hmm.
and not just about being intimate, what kind of advice did you give her?
I believe I gave her the wrong advice. Now, I told her to let him down easily. I said there's no reason to hurt his feelings, just remain his friend, just make it clear that you don't want to date any longer. And from what I have learned in my search now, in my research, is that that was the worst advice I could have given her. That with these types of personalities, you have to be very firm and say, we are done. Don't ever call me again.
Wasn't he also abusive?
Yes.
Physically abusive?
As I found out after her death, that he had slapped her, and I think slapping is physical abuse, and it dances, and even at our swimming pool, that he would slap her.
This is going to seem like an odd question, Dr. Blinder, but Mark Smith, one of the things I recall him saying in either his defense or in his testimony was that she was leading him on. He felt that all this time she wanted him, but she just wouldn't commit and so forth. Was the sort of letting down easily, or was a 14-year-old's relationship to an 18-year-old and this pressure and this abuse, was it creating an inability on her part to really be that definite? And was he reading all the wrong signs, which I would assume some of these kids do? They just read into situations what they want to read into.
Exactly. It's not so much reading, but even creating the wrong signs. They develop a love relationship where they play both parts.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps your daughter gave him little places to stand now and then. But for the most part, this is a caricature of love. When he talks about, I love you, what he really is saying is, I need you. And he will create, using his love object as the beginning clay, whatever he needs in order to feel whole, in order to feel complete. It almost doesn't matter what she does or who she is. He will endow her with the qualities that he requires in order to maintain his self-esteem.
He is now serving, what, a life sentence after breaking in the house and stabbing your daughter, and it was a very violent death. Looking back, what could have been done differently? What kind of signs? And I know this is something you must go through every day.
I agonize over that. I think if Jenny had only told me that he was threatening her with notes and verbal threats, I certainly would have stepped in and I would have confronted him and called his parents, but I didn't have any idea.
And this is the staggering thing, Dr. Blender, and can you explain this to me? Not only didn't Jenny tell her mom, but there must have been a dozen other people who knew what was going on, and we talk about this over and over on this show. Everybody knew except mom, except dad. And you lose a child as a result. Why can't people, I mean, are they worried about confidentiality, loyalty to friends? What is it that prevents them from coming to someone like Vicki and saying, I think your daughter's in trouble?
In their defense, I suspect that while each one of these people saw a little piece of the pattern, nobody got to see the whole pattern to be able to recognize the enormity of the problem that your daughter was getting into. Even you, if you look back retrospectively, you can probably see little pieces of the pattern that you can now fit together into this obsessive, addictive mosaic. But at the time, I'm sure even your daughter didn't appreciate and couldn't tell you what she would have had to have told you in order for you to recognize what you were really dealing with.
All right, finally, what can parents do when they do piece the pieces of the puzzle together?
I think as a consequence of programs like this, they'll recognize the pattern with fewer pieces. And among the pieces that are red flags are, of course, number one, evidence of physical abuse, which she may be ashamed about. So you may pick up the shame in the covering rather than what it is she's covering. Number two, she's clearly caught up in a relationship with a young man who's focusing more on her to the exclusion of anything else. He's a pest. He's controlling. He won't let go. The phone calls, the flowers, there's too much. I mean, anybody can fall in love, and adolescents become infatuated. But when this goes on day after day after day, especially when the girl is trying to back off, that should be another warning sign.
And then what do they do?
Cut it off. And you can't be diplomatic about it. You know, you just have to be clear and harsh and total, so that the young man doesn't have these little hints with which he might build up some hope that maybe it'll work out if only I try more flowers, if I only try more phone calls. You have to preclude that no matter what he does, nothing is going to work. It is over. And
you don't have to worry about disturbing your relationship with your daughter because she wants it as well as you do at the time.
Most of the time. Unfortunately, there are a couple of times when you have as an adversary the girl who's maybe caught up in this process herself, and that's a real toughie.
Yeah. Then you become a real parent for a while. Thank you, Dr. Blender, and thank you, Vicki, for being with us today. Where is the borderline for obsessive love? In a moment, Dr. Joyce Brothers will be here to explain.
Calls at the office, you leave me no choice.
It's 2 o'clock in the morning here. Can't this wait till tomorrow morning?
Oh, is it awkward for you to talk?
You could say that,
I've got to see you.
The movie Fatal Attraction seemed to touch an emotional chord in many, many people. Where does a sex game move from something healthy into something far more dangerous and even perhaps deadly? Joining us now to explain this sometimes subtle difference is Dr. Joyce Brothers. The story we just covered a second ago, man was obviously very, very disturbed, and we were talking about obsessive love. Are we all capable of obsessive love, or are some of us more borderline than others?
Well, anything that you find in the normal person, you will find in the abnormal. It's a matter of the extent of it. For example, if you weren't a bit suspicious, I could sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. But at the same time, if you were suspicious of everything and felt that people were making threats at you and so on when they weren't, then you would be on the paranoid end of it. And so when we fall in love, we jump into love. We don't just fall in love because it completes us. When we love, we are dissatisfied with ourselves and we meet the person who seems to make a whole person. Years ago, we had the idea, the Greeks even had the idea that man and woman were one person. And so when the bumps in your head fit the holes in hers, you become one. And that's a normal feeling for love. But when you cannot be away from the other person, when you have to keep calling, when you are so jealous that you can't bear to see anyone even look at that individual, then it goes into the obsessive.
Have you ever had anything like that happen to you?
No, well, yes, kind of in high school I did. It wasn't anywhere near what this other situation was. But I wonder, and as the mother of daughters, I wonder how, with the gray area where it's not lethal, but you do have to let somebody down. You do have to say, I don't like this. I don't want to see you. And it hurts so much to hurt another person. How do you do that? I mean, how do you teach a child to do that, a teenager?
Well,
we all want to be liked. We don't want to, you know what I mean?
But
Hurt
I think you
somebody.
have to teach a child that it is more hurtful to string a person along, to make them wait by the phone hoping that the phone will ring, to make them hope that this will all blow over, and that it is fairer just to say directly, I like you as a person, we don't mesh, this is the end. And sometimes the person gets upset or angry, but it clears the air. Now, if there's any sense, as in this case, that there is more than something normal going on, then you need to take very definite steps. You need to change the locks on your door. You need to change your telephone. You need to tell your daughter she has to have somebody walk to school with her, and for a period of time until it blows over, you have to be very careful with your daughter.
Let's on a happier note turn to some, what do we want to call them? Fair games, not bad games, but good games that we play with one another that seem to enhance our relationship.
And I think those are very important because a sense of play, particularly in a marriage, those marriages that are the best marriages have a little sense of we're two kids enjoying ourselves and we can laugh together. And for teenagers, they need a flirting game. All mammals flirt. And it seems to be something inborn. And when kids flirt with one another, they learn how to be close, but not so close that they are putting their egos on the line. And so the first flirting games can be a line that a boy will use on a girl or a girl will use on a boy. And then later, if a girl's a good flirt, she'll make up nicknames for a boy. Boys love nicknames, particularly, I mean, not the kind you'd never say to a husband, you'd never call him Baldy or something like that. But nicknames that give a guy a feeling that he's some kind of a guy, that's fun.
Yeah, it makes
flirting.
him feel special, of course, yeah.
Have you ever surprised your wife or played a little game where she thought you were going to do one thing and then you did another?
Oh, yeah, I've done this on her birthday where I'll get a ton of people together and I'll have them waiting someplace. And it's a big deal, and if I told her where we were going, she'd know. So I get her in the car under false pretenses and tell her we have to go to this other thing. And unfortunately, by the time we're in the car and on our way down there, we're screaming and yelling at each other because she doesn't want to go, and she doesn't understand why she has to go. And by the time I get there, I said, well, I wish you hadn't come anyway. And then, of course, we walk in the restaurant or the play or whatever it is, and everything is forgotten. I've given up on that. Trying to surprise her is just impossible.
But I think it's great fun to know that you are capable of it, and because when you have a husband who is totally dependable and predictable, he always shows up with flowers, and you always go to your mother's on Sunday, and you always know what he's going to do. It's not nearly the good marriage, as if every once in a while he is unpredictable, maybe even doing something a little dangerous. One of the sex games that married couples play is to have sex in different places. And I did a little study in New York about what New Yorkers do and found some really strange...
You mean like you do it in Colorado and she does it in Milwaukee? Or?
Oh, no. Yeah. No, well, I found couples, for example, who, one couple made love in a big serial mock-up on a stage, and another while playing in the Philharmonic, and another in a phone booth. I don't know if they charged at AT&T or not.
That's the last time they'll be invited to the concert, I'll tell you that. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you with us, Dr. Joyce Brothers. As always, you bring such a lot of fun and light and certainly understanding to the program. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, and have a good week. Enjoy.